I was halfway through my first sentence at the county commission microphone when the sheriff's deputy stepped around the TV camera, reached past the HOA president's stack of glossy binders, and served her on the spot. The room went from murmurs to dead quiet as the county attorney announced the gate blocking my driveway would be removed today. Not next month, not after a study. Today, I slid my grandfather's deed under the document camera and said, steady as I could, "This is my road," and even over the hum of the lights, I felt the whole room tilt. My name is Noah Carter, 35 Army engineer. I came home after 3 years overseas to the cedar cabin my grandfather built on Lake Briar outside Grayson in Northfield County. Nothing fancy, just a porch that creaks like an old friend, and a gravel lane that meets County Road 9 without drama. Or that's how it used to be, because the first thing I saw was 2 fake stone pillars, like dentures rising out of the ditch, a shiny keypad asking for a resident access code, and 3 cameras staring into my windshield like bouncers. Deciding if I deserved to exist, then a golf cart appeared with a little amber light spinning on top, and a woman in a red blazer smiled the way people smile when they think paperwork is a personality. "Private property," she said. "Hello. You're trespassing on community land," and I rolled the window down. Held up a plastic sleeve. I've kept in my glove box since I was 21. Recorded deed, Carter family. Dix. That lane is my legal access, and her smile didn't crack. It curdled. "You can show that to the compliance board," she said, tapping her clipboard. "You can pay your assessments 10 days. She clipped a paper to the keypad like I was a yard sale, buzzed herself away. And yeah, that happened. I slept at a buddy's place in town, drove back at sunrise, hoping it was a clerical mix-up, maybe a temporary construction fix. Instead, my old mailbox was gone, and a brass box gleamed with a plaque that read, "Cedar Hollow Shores." Management office inside. Waited a certified letter that smelled like perfume and victory. 3,004 DEG rates in past due assessments, $600 emergency gate fee, $150 compliance inspection for unauthorized structures, 10-day lien threat under the State Planned Community Act, 9 pages of legal-sounding fog tied up with a logo and a suite number that turned out to be a shipping store. Between a smoothie shop and a nail salon. You know what I mean, the kind of theater that hopes you won't check the ticket. Anger is a short candle on a windy night, useful for a minute, then dark. So I did what the Army baked into my bones. I gathered intelligence, courthouse records, state business registry, county road files. I traced our deed back to my grandfather's careful signature and a clerk's stamp older than 3 county. Attorneys found no HOA formation on file, no licensed property management company, and one lonely page where my access lane got reclassified from county, maintained to private entrance on a Friday afternoon, with no public notice. When I set the file on the counter, the engineer on duty exhaled like a kid caught with a cheat sheet. "We'll look into that," he said. "Please do," I said, and drove back to the cabin to find bright orange. No trespassing signs hammered into my oaks. Deep, the kind of deep that strips bark and respect. A new camera aimed through my kitchen window, and a brand new lock on my door. I stood with my hand on the rail. My grandfather sanded until my breathing slowed. I didn't kick the door. Didn't call the news. I bought trail cameras and a spiral notebook and started stacking receipts. Day 1 of surveillance was quiet. Day 2, my shoreline got a dump of bagged yard waste, and a hand-painted sign popped up by the launch. Day use fee. 20 cash only. 3 boats. $60, no permit day. 3. The keypad camera caught cash slipping into the red Blazer's tote like a slot machine, paying out just slowly enough to feel legitimate. So I made coffee strong enough to stand a spoon and knocked on doors with a plate of church cookies at first stop. Eleanor Briggs, 76, retired nurse, a calendar. With Bird's person. Who remembers birthdays in pencil, she cried before I finished. Thanking her for sweeping my porch and pulled a manila envelope from a knitting bag inside were letters signed by Patricia Sloan, president, saying I'd been killed overseas and my estate was in limbo. One offered to acquire the Carter parcel to prevent undesirable development for $15,000. Another nearly tricked her into signing a power of attorney because things get complicated when men die without wills. I thanked her, promised I wasn't a ghost, walked to the bait shop that smells like minnows and memory, and Jake Morales, stocky forearms like he's been lifting the same business since he was 20, stared at the register while it tallied a day's worth of nothing. Weekend guys won't come through the gate, he said. She interrogates them about where they're from. And if they have boat insurance, you cut my traffic by 1/3, you cut my life. He showed me a neighborhood Facebook post calling me unstable, using my military training like a scare word, and the comment section looked like it needed a shower. The worst part of a smear isn't the lie. It's watching strangers decide they believe it. I knocked on Harper and Dean Wallace's door, attorney couple weekend cabin case law in their heads, and a couch they'll help you move, and in a home office that smells like toner and eucalyptus. We drew a map, quiet title. Action to force claims under oath. Temporary restraining order to stop the harassment and the fake lien state complaints for unlicensed property management and fee collection without any legal entity. Shoreline dumping defamation. The works. The next morning, a deputy showed up for a welfare check after an anonymous caller reported a veteran in crisis at my cabin. My old commander from Fort Liberty called with a voice that started polite and moved straight to offended because someone had also phoned the base claiming I'd threatened families and needed psychiatric intervention. Captain Elena Rodriguez at JAG stepped in with a letter and the promise of testimony that my service record is boring in the best way. We don't let civilians weaponize our soldiers. She said document everything. So I did. I hired a surveyor to plant tall orange stakes on the line, set up a temporary legal easement through the Wallace's property so a keypad couldn't trap me on my own land. Filed state business complaints with screenshots of Patricia's invoices. 7 families paying around $300 a month, mostly cash. No maintenance account, and requested the engineer's paper trail on the road change. Soon an email landed, admitting there'd been no public notice. Then the environmental inspector showed up with a clipboard and a Chuckle grandfathered system. He said cleaner than many new ones, and he noted that false reports are chargeable when they come from a person, not a ghost. The mask slipped when her private investigator parked near the public launch, so long it looked like he was waiting for conscience. I brought him coffee. Introduced myself 2 days later. He slid me a thumb drive and a receipt at a diner. The recording wasn't theatrical, just a voice that was unmistakably Patricia asking him to photograph a bag of weed he would find in my shed. He refused, she threatened. He kept the recording and a little bit of his soul. Harper grinned like a lawyer on Christmas. Then she dug into Patricia's divorce filings and found the fuse that explained everything the settlement required. Patricia to keep her home's assessed value above $410,000 to preserve alimony. Foreclosure review had started. One appraisal could bury her. And lake access boosts. Value a fake HOA with a gate and a website can dress up a property faster than paint. That was the twist. This wasn't about safety or standards. It was about inflating value with shoreline she didn't own to keep checks coming. You know what I mean? Commissioner Lila Humphrey had already been hearing from weekend anglers who didn't love paying cash to a golf cart at a public launch when we handed her a packet. Deed survey engineer email, environmental report, Facebook screenshots. She scheduled a public agenda item on lake access and HOA legitimacy. And that's when Patricia sprinted for the cameras. A TV interview about rural violence, a website called Families for Safety, with my photo under a headline that didn't believe in commas. And then she showed up on my porch with what looked like a cashier's check for 50 grand. "We can end this today," she said. Voice low, like we were trading barn tools. "Take it and I'll handle the rest, as community growth. Patriotic thing." And I didn't invite her in. The patriotic thing is telling the truth. I said she left, smelling like a department store counter, and panic. 3 days later, the commission room was packed. Fishermen in caps, retirees, in cardigans, young couples, who like their weekends quiet. Reporters lined up like gulls on a dock. I sat with Harper and Dean Jake behind me, smelling like coffee and stubborn hope. Eleanor holding her envelope like it could warm her hands. The state revenue investigator rolled in a laptop. Patricia swept in 20 minutes late with heels that announced her, "Madam Chair Commissioners." She said our families have been terrorized for months by an individual whose mental health history is a public concern. She clicked through grainy gate footage and bylaws formatted like a magazine insert. And then the county attorney stood like a man who'd been waiting to open a file. Cedar Hollow Shores HOA does not exist as a registered association, he said. No formation, no authority to assess or lien. The engineer acknowledges the lane was reclassified without required notice, and it is reversed. Effective immediately, he listed unlicensed management fee collection under color of authority. Shoreline dumping. False reports under review. The state revenue slide went up, with potential violations and numbers that weren't small. A deputy moved down the aisle. The chair recognized me. I didn't grandstand. I put the deed under the camera, the survey, the trail cam stills, showing cash for day use on public water, the audio from the PI who refused to plant evidence, the environmental letter, clearing my septic, and noting a false report. Harper summarized the quiet title, and T.R.O. Dean outlined the defamation. Jake spoke about losing a third of his weekend traffic. Eleanor read the line where Patricia wrote the community needed to protect property values from the wrong kind of owners. Patricia's young attorney started to object, stopped, adjusted his glasses, stared at his hands, and then the deputy served Patricia while state revenue handed over citations that looked like parking tickets. If parking tickets could buy a dock? The chair announced county crews would remove the gate today and restore access to County Road 9 outside. Under an October sky that couldn't decide between blue and worry, a flatbed idled while 2 workers loosened bolts from fake stone. The chain clanked onto the truck, and I felt my jaw let go. For the first time in months, I didn't gloat. I just said quiet enough for me. That's my family's road again, and that should be the end, clean and final. But the real world loves a sequel. The developer Patricia had courted sent an attorney to ask hypothetically how a county reverses a road reclassification without opening itself to a takings claim. Maybe it dies in a hallway, as most bad ideas do. When sunlight hits them. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe the next fight is bigger than 1 gate and 1 red blazer. Tell me what you think. Was the county right to rip that thing out the same day? Or should they have waited for a judge and 6 more hearings? How far should agencies go to protect public access when private interests dress up in HOA language and hope nobody checks the registry? And be honest, when you see veteran and unstable in the same sentence, do you picture what a stranger tells you to picture, or do you wait for facts? Drop your take in the comments where you're watching from, and if you've seen an HOA step past its authority, or a stack of legal-sounding paper used to make decent people back down if you're in the middle of one. Now say so, I can't be your lawyer, but I can tell you exactly where I started. With a notebook, a deed, a camera pointed the right direction, and the nerve to stand up in a room and say calmly, "This is my road."